We are talking about the Mississippi Rebels today on the podcast.
This is new.
They find themselves ranked in the top 10, which I'm sure feels nice and comfortable for them. They are, if you are to believe social media, talking about a potential trip to the college football playoff if and when they get this win on Saturday.
Okay.
And they are coming into Athens for checks my notes, a night game in Sanford Stadium in front of 93,000 people. What could possibly go wrong for the Mississippi Rebels? Well, let's talk about it today on the Locked On Bulldogs podcast.
You are Locked On Bulldogs, your daily podcast on the Georgia Bulldogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time, download the app today. Get $20 off using promo code Locked On. More on them in a moment. Daniel did not really hint, but just came out and said, Ole Miss is coming in riding high on the hog.
Hey,
They think.
Feeling good.
They believe. They know. They feel it in their bones, and they feel it intrinsically in the rest of the world that the karmic deities that be will grant them success on the field as they pave their way with unicorns and rainbow and Lane Kiffin's dog tweeting all the way to college football playoff kingdom. Daniel, this is their belief.
That was a lot of words, very few of which I understood, but
I'm poetically.
I'm gonna roll with it.
You just bathe in it, Daniel. Just bathe in it.
Just let it wash over you.
That's what I'm saying.
Listen, it's another tough test.
Yeah,
for Georgia. It's gonna be interesting as we go through this week. I don't know that I have an answer to this question yet. Maybe you do. Do you? Is this a tougher test than last week against Missouri, or is it not quite as tough of a test? I don't think I have an answer for that yet. I think I'm going to need some more time to digest and process this Ole Miss team. But there's no real point in comparing the two. But do you have a thought on that as we move into the week?
I do. I think this is a easier test than Missouri. I believe Missouri to be the better team all around. I sincerely do. I think that if you look at what Missouri has done to date with all the teams they have played and how they have played them and how they performed, the ways that they have won has been quite impressive to me. Again, we did not think of them lightly. We've said second best offense, which by the way was proven because LSU couldn't do anything against Alabama in the second half of that game, and they couldn't stop Alabama at all. But I digress. The defense is far better in my mind than Ole Miss. I sincerely think that was the case. I don't think Ole Miss matches up well against us. I think Ole Miss matches up against other teams, but not against us. Yeah. So if you're asking me, is Ole Miss a better team? Well, I think Missouri is, but I think specifically when it comes to Georgia, Missouri matched up against us very well, where I don't think Ole Miss has the dudes that Missouri does, or
that's interesting,
the complementary play style that Missouri does. I think you take away the one-trick pony of Ole Miss, you're gold. I think it's Tennessee 2 years ago.
We're going to talk about in the next two segments, kind of what we see for this Ole Miss team offensively and defensively. I want to get into kind of what they like to do, what they don't like to do. Start with the head coach, though. It's interesting because when you're a fan of an SEC school, you get used to this, right? Every fan base. If you're on the internet, if you're on Twitter especially, every fan base is filled with trolls, right? Like Georgia's no different. Every fan base has got, the one or two or three Twitter accounts that's their job. They just literally exist to poke and jab at other teams. kick you while you're down, make fun of you a little bit, kind of play it off as like innocent banter, but that's literally their only purpose. It's what makes social media truly one of the worst places in the entire world. Every fan base has trolls. It's just that most of the time, those trolls are not also the head coach of the football team.
It's really weird how this happens, how the Venn diagram is actually just one big circle called Lane Kiffin.
It's just Lane Kiffin, who has honestly just built an entire brand. If you want to talk about coaches who have successfully built a brand, I think the 4 most successful coaching brands in college football right now are 1, Kirby Smart, and his brand is winning national championships. 2, Lincoln Riley, and his brand is never playing defense at all for any reason ever. Number 3 is Nick Saban, and his brand is bursting a blood vessel in his eye. That is his actual brand. Whether he's actually burst a blood vessel in his eye or not is kind of irrelevant. That's just the way that he runs his program. And number 4 is Lane Kiffin, and his brand is he has somehow found a way to pair pretty successful and I think very talented college football coach with internet troll.
Yeah.
And it's unprecedented in the coaching world. Like, you don't see anybody interacting on social media. Shane Beamer will get in there and mix it up on social media, but notice I said successful college football coach, and so that just ruled out Shane Beamer altogether. Lane Kiffin is a guy in this matchup who scares me when I'm listing assets for Ole Miss. And we're going to get to, I like a lot of the pieces on this Ole Miss team. When I'm listing assets, though, on this Ole Miss team, Lane Kiffin is at the top of my list, Clint. Do you agree or disagree?
Yeah, Daniel, I have to. I have to agree. I can't fight that.
Now, his record against good teams is bad.
It's not great.
It's not good. But I don't necessarily know you can put all the blame of that on him. He just hasn't had good enough teams to beat really good teams. I think Lane Kiffin's an asset, and he is a guy that, much like Eli Drinkowitz, is going to find a way to scheme against Georgia in a way that I anticipate is going to bring me a lot of anxiety on Saturday. Like, I expect him to have a very successful game plan against this Georgia team. Now, I'm going to trust Kirby Smart and Glenn Schumann ability to, and Mike Bobo's ability to adjust at halftime, like we saw in the Missouri game, make changes and get things done. But I expect Lane Kiffin to have a successful game plan, and I expect him to make things difficult on Georgia on Saturday. I think when you talk about this Ole Miss team, Lane Kiffin's ability to be creative and use the pieces that he has to the best of his ability, their ability, is a huge asset for them.
Now, I started this by saying Missouri's the better team, and I think the better, but if you were to give me, I felt so confident in the money line, the win for Georgia. I would have bet it 99 out of 100 times. Okay. I think the spectrum of outcomes against Ole Miss is far wider. I never thought Missouri could have steamrolled us, right? 35-14, whatever, 42-49.
You think that's an outcome here?
I don't think, no. Hear me out.
Okay.
Again, I'm not predicting that to be an outcome. What I'm saying is the spectrum is far more wild with Ole Miss because Lane Kiffin is a wild card himself. And he does, you give him enough recipe, you give him enough juice, he picks the right play call. I mean, you saw it at Alabama. He would know a touchdown was coming before the snap was made. That can happen. to the Dogs on Saturday if they're not careful. So do I think they're better than Missouri?
If he has a wide receiver matched up on number 6, then
Just-
is he going to put his arms up in the air early?
We're going to get to that. We're going to come back, talk about more of what Ole Miss does well. But first, this.
We'll get there. Don't worry about it.
I believe it. This is, in fact, game time. Daniel, you and I, we know game time very well.
We love game time.
We love game time. You know what we love about it? It's easy. It's convenient.
Yeah.
Straight
what
to your
else do we
phone.
love?
It's great and last-minute tickets to your phone to get you into games that you want to see. And that's exactly what Daniel and I did. We've used them before. We'll use them again.
I mean, all those ticket apps, though, Clint, they're the same, though, right?
Let me tell you, as somebody who didn't trust Game Time at first, and I thought, you know what, let's do some research. Let's waste hours upon hours. Turns out we did the game. We did the metrics. We had the cart all checked out on 10 different websites, waiting to see taxes and
It's
fees.
not an exaggeration.
We're not as
Same
Game Time-
tickets, different sites.
Yep.
What was the cheapest one out of all of them, Clint?
Game Time was, Daniel. Download
That's
the Game Time app today. Use promo code LockedOnCollege for $20 off your order. Use code LockedOnCollege, $20 off. Download Game Time app today. Last minute game tickets, they're fantastic. Go get it right now. Okay, let's talk about more what this Ole Miss team does really well. And Daniel, I'm just going to tell you, we've done this before. This is Dawgs stats. It's a very easy indication. I'm not going to bore you with the details of how these stats are given. I'm going to say this. Georgia took a hit on Saturday with advanced metrics because Missouri had over 40% success rate on offense, which is not great. First time that Georgia's ever given that up this year.
I mean, based on my eye test, I would have said Schrader had 100% success rate. Literally every time he touched the ball, he gained like 7 to 9 yards.
The off tackle play was
The stretch left was, I mean, I've never seen anything like it in my life.
They said Terrell Davis from the booth, and I thought, I want to fight you, but gosh, that's dead on to exactly what I'm picturing right now. It's Madden, it's Jerome Bennis stretch left, it's Terrell Davis stretch left. So Georgia gave up success rate.
At what point did anyone think that Schrader was going to get compared, by the way, to like that's how we made that kid look?
Okay. Really quick, does Ole Miss have a oft-talented running back who's been much maligned this year but could bust out at any moment?
Yeah, Quinshon Judkins still has 2 legs.
Based
on my latest intel.
He's still talented. So Ole Miss has a success rate on offense that's pretty dang good. They get 6.8 yards per play on offense. Georgia, by the way, 7.16 yards per play on offense.
Yeah.
Defense, Ole Miss is giving about 5 yards. Georgia, 4.5 yards. Net is a little bit different. Net's a little worse this week for Georgia, like I said, because of the Mizzou game. But this just in. Here's where Ole Miss, here's the neighborhood. Here are the peers of Ole Miss as it pertains to yards given up, yards gained, and net yardage per play.
I'm sorry, are we looking at Ole Miss offensively, defensively, or as a whole team?
Whole team. We're looking as a whole team.
Carry on.
Okay, thank you. This is the neighborhood they swim in.
Mm-hmm.
UCLA, LSU, Florida State, Oregon State, Louisville. Any of those
are good teams.
These are good teams. Oregon State, good team. Solid
Louisville
team. Louisville
8-1. LSU really good on one side of the ball.
They do unfortunately have
play both.
They're mandated to field a defense.
How'd UCLA look this weekend, Clint?
Oh my gosh. I can't.
You want to fire some people up, by the way. Just make some bad bets and then have the stones to post it on your own social media.
Dare you?
Like, you get some people fired up. Like,
I would just like to say to all those people fired up about it, then you give me your picks for 5 years like we have.
I'll listen to your podcast and I'll check them out. Don't worry about it.
They don't have one.
I'll subscribe.
Nope, they won't. So what I'm telling you is that Ole Miss is a good team, Daniel. They're a good team.
Yeah, they're a good team.
Okay.
Here's the thing about Ole Miss that There's two things about Ole Miss that intrigue me.
Okay.
And I want to start with one, and then in the third segment, I want to move to the other. The first thing about Ole Miss that intrigues me is Jackson Dart. We're going to talk to Steven. Are we going to talk to Steven this week? Surely we will. We're going to try to have we're going to try to talk to old Steven from Locked On Rebels or Locked On Ole Miss, or I don't know what the show's called. You'll find it. It's Locked On show for Ole Miss. Go listen to Steven. He's fantastic.
He is.
We're going to talk to him, and I happen to know Steven is a big Jackson Dart fan. Like,
loves
big Jackson Dart fan. Early in this football season, Clint, I'll just be totally honest with you. I thought Jackson Dart was really bad. I thought he was very poor at the quarterback position. But I think he has officially proven me wrong. And I think he is officially a weapon, not just with his legs, which he's always been a weapon with his legs, which, by the way, Georgia fans, if that doesn't immediately make you start to twitch,
I'll say
it
again.
Should.
I'll say again. Exceptionally good running quarterback.
Jackson Dart is also a weapon with his arm. He has turned into a really productive quarterback in Lane Kiffin's system. And I think, sadly enough, he again, while I agree that Ole Miss does not have the weapons on the outside that Missouri does, I'm going to argue that the quarterback play at Ole Miss is at least as good, and this is not a knock on Cook because Cook is a very good SEC quarterback.
Yes, he is.
I think the quarterback play at Ole Miss is at least as good, if not slightly better. And I think it's the kind of quarterback play that could potentially give Georgia some real trouble on Saturday. I don't know that I love this matchup for Georgia defensively.
Now, look, we talked about yesterday's podcast how JDJ going down is going to be a massive loss because he's the quarterback of the defensive side. But I'm just going to tell you this. If I watched what Kirby Smart and Glenn Shue were doing near the second half and trying to do in the second quarter of the game against Missouri was spy Cook. That's what they were trying to do. Mm-hmm. JDJ was not picking the right side of the block when the center or the guard came out to give him. He was choosing the wrong side. He wasn't quick enough to get over the top or cut underneath. It wasn't great. But I'm going to tell you this right now, Daniel. I'm not saying he's going to replace JDJ or that is not a massive loss. But if you're telling me I get Jalen back there spying Dart,
you get Raylan Wilson back there,
I'm fine with that. I'm happy with that.
That's a role I like the true freshman being in because you just say, you see that guy?
Go get him.
Tackle him when he tries to run.
So I don't have to read any misdirections, set a line, nothing.
Just watch his hips, and wherever he goes, you go.
Well, that's what I've been doing since I was 8 years old.
And just in the schoolyard. Like
cool.
That's something I feel comfortable with those young linebackers out there.
Yes. Now, unfortunately, we don't know when they're going to run the play. You can't just do that. That's the problem with the footballing. So
it is tough.
It's real tough.
Jackson Dart is a concern for this Georgia defense.
It should be.
Now, we'll talk about the other side of the ball, but we'll talk about. I got another concern for this Ole Miss offense. We'll get to all of that right after this.
New rule: you're only allowed one bucket-worthy conversation.
Sorry, it's late in the year. It's a tough stretch. Like, we're going to have a lot of it. FanDuel Sportsbook is the place that Clint and I go to make all of our wagers on Saturdays. All of the wagers that are just absolutely deplorable and will never cash. And I can't believe it was easy money just to bet the other side.
Easy money.
That's
why FanDuel.com is full of poor people.
FanDuel.com/locked on. Make every moment more. If you go to FanDuel Sportsbook right now, you can get all of the lines, all of the action, everything that you want. Go to FanDuel.com/locked on. FanDuel Sportsbook, the NBA, college football, the NFL, whatever your sport of choosing is, FanDuel has got it. It's the place that Clint and I trust. It's the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network and Locked On Bulldogs. FanDuel.com/locked-on to get hundreds of dollars in free bonus bets after you make your first wager. FanDuel, make every moment more.
All right, Daniel, you have more bucket-worthy conversations for us because the quarterback who is mobile and can run as well as throw up to a whole lot of talented wide receivers in a spread, high-powered offense wasn't bucket-worthy enough. Let's talk more, shall we?
Let me just paint a picture of who Mississippi is on offense. And I think sadly that picture is going to overlap in what are our two biggest concerns about the Georgia defense.
Here we go.
So we've already talked about, well, we've already hinted at one of them, but Ole Miss is not a balanced offense. Just for some context, Georgia runs the ball about 49% of the time, and they throw the ball about 51% of the time this year. Total plays throughout the season. That's pretty darn balanced, Clint. Ole Miss, on the other hand, runs the ball about 58% of the time, and they throw the ball about 42% of the time. That puts them as one of the most, towards the top half of the most run-heavy offenses in all of college football. They run the ball a lot. In this offense, 58% is a pretty high number, especially for a team that's not like, I mean, you're getting into like the Air Forces. Obviously, those are going to be much higher percentages. 58% is a crazy high percentage. Ole Miss runs the ball a lot. We talked about that. They run it with the running backs. They run it with the quarterback. We've talked about how that matches up against this Georgia defense. It doesn't make me feel great based on the linebacker play and what we've seen from the defensive front. But then you combine that with the fact that, okay, well, Ole Miss is a running team. They're not really a passing team because they run it 58% of the time. They only throw it 42% of the time. So they're not really a passing team. Ole Miss is 7th nationally. In yards per passing attempt.
Okay, so let me understand this correctly, Daniel. If I could
you extrapolate for the people.
Let me distill this down.
Okay. Yeah.
So they're successful on offense running the ball a majority of the time.
58%, they love to run the ball.
And they're very good at it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not because they're deficient in the pass game. It's actually when they pass at a lower percentage amount of time than other teams for a higher outcome and yield on those passes than everybody but 6 teams in the nation.
When they pass, it counts, is what we're trying to say. 9.7 yards per attempt. That's on the season.
First down when they pass.
Every time they let the ball go. So 7th nationally in passing yards per attempt, which means they like to get, now some of that's going to be run after catch, yes, but it means that they're getting the ball down the field, Clint, on a consistent basis, which brings the Georgia secondary, particularly the Georgia corners, back into focus. I think what we saw Missouri do on Saturday that we really haven't seen a Georgia opponent do, and this is credit to Eli Drinkovitz. And I think, you look at the next 2 coaches that Georgia's going to line up against, and they are Lane Kiffin and Josh Heupel. Like, these guys are going to do this. What we saw Missouri do is say, where's number 6? I don't care which of our wide receivers is matched up against him. I don't care if it's not Luther Burden, if it's not our best option, if it's not the guy that we would love to be throwing the ball to. In the second half, Missouri played the where's number 6? We're going to throw it at him. And yes, Dalen Everett did not have his best game. He did not. I thought there were a couple times that he was in some decent enough position, didn't make a play on the ball, wasn't able to defend the back shoulder. But more than that, he was just straight up getting picked on. And Clint, that's not going to stop in this game. And when Ole Miss throws the ball, because they're successful running it, because they have such a good play action game, they get shots down the field and they're going to get matched up on this UGA secondary. And it is potentially going to be a problem for Georgia in this game. It is a concern if you're a Georgia fan on the defensive side of the ball, because what Ole Miss likes to do, I think, corresponds to what Georgia struggles to defend.
Well, I'm going to push back a little bit on this because, Daniel, we've been watching a bend, don't break defense. We've seen this coming. The Missouri game was just the coming out party for it. You and I, our eyeballs have seen metrics and stats and data, and other people are now saying Georgia gave up a success rate against Missouri. We have seen this coming for some time. We have been much maligned about this defense, about the inside linebackers not being able to tackle, about the corner play, one corner play in particular.
Mm-hmm.
The secondary, the safety position, the star position, as well as the not pressure on the quarterback. But Daniel, I know this is going to sound weird because, again, Missouri was our worst defensive performance to date. But it was kind of a turning the page experience as well. We saw Humphreys come in and perform very, very well. Sounded like Glenn and Kirby are tired of not getting production on the other side opposite Kamari Lassiter. We saw Malachi Starks still be him. That dude, when called upon, is a shutdown, lockdown safety, incredible tackler behind. Nothing's going to get behind him like that unless you go blitz and do single man coverage to Luther as he streaks to the touchdown. And we saw also a transition, a continuation of transition of the edge defenders, Daniel. We saw Marvin in there quite a bit. We saw Jalen in there quite a bit. We saw Damon in there quite a bit, Christian Miller. We're seeing new faces come in. So if this defense, it was a turning the chapter, and if you're telling me that the second half, not the first half, the second half of Missouri game, go back and watch that second half because it was a different defense that played then. It was a different outcome, Daniel. And yes, the stretch run still does concern me. Completely with you. My gosh, we got to figure that out. Got to figure out how to get pressure from the 3, 4, 5 gap, not just the 1, 2 and the outside shade of that. But if you're telling me I get Humphreys for a whole game, if you're telling me that
I hope I do.
I
hope I do.
You're telling me Lassiter comes down in the slot as well on certain plays and certain packages, and you're telling me that Jalen's in there more as well as Damon. There's a personnel rotation. We figured some things out. I'm feeling okay if that's the case. It was kind of a little turkey baster, a little boop. Oh, we need some attention over here, and we got the attention that we wanted, if I can be honest.
All right, we shall see. Listen. The nice thing about this game on Saturday, and we'll just say this for tomorrow's show. The nice thing about this game on Saturday is that Ole Miss is not going to be the only team who gets to play offense.
Nope.
Clint. And see, when we get to play offense, Clint, we're going to be just fine. We're going to be just fine against this Mississippi defense. All of that and more tomorrow on the Locked On Bulldogs podcast. He is Clint. I'm Daniel, and we will see you guys then.
See ya.